Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome back to a new YouTube video. Hope you guys are all doing well. Today we're going to be talking about a topic that I've wanted to discuss on this YouTube channel for a while, and that is how to get hired by your favorite clients and dream brands to work with. And I think there's a lot of gray area about this topic on the internet. People just don't really have a lot of great information on even YouTube about how to actually do this. And I really want to kind of take this as a chance to demystify this topic and be really transparent with you guys about how I've gotten to where I'm at, and also how you guys can be working towards getting hired by your dream clients down the road as well. So over the last several years, I've definitely started to work with a lot more household names. I've really had the chance to work with a lot of great brands, and I'm super excited, and I really love getting the chance to work with really talented people. But it wasn't always that way, and I definitely had to work my way towards where I'm at right now. Obviously, this is not necessarily where I want to be just yet, but I am excited about the future possibilities. So over the last several years, I've shot for quite a few different brands. Some of my favorites would have to probably be Volvo, Garmin, Uber, and Honda. And throughout all of this paid work with these brands, I've really had the chance to see what it's like working on bigger sets and really, kind of seeing the difference between where I started and, now. The difference in the crew size and the difference in, really the quality of the client has definitely changed a lot over time for me. And that might be changing for you guys as well. I think when all of us think about why we aren't getting hired for a certain job, or we start comparing ourselves to other photographers or filmmakers, the reality of it is a lot of the time other people are just frankly putting out better stuff than we are. So I think a lot of us as artists don't really like to think about the fact that we might need to improve on a certain skill or overall as an artist in order to get the caliber of work that we want to be getting. But the reality of it is we all at some point have to just kind of put our heads down and really just dive into, improving as an artist and realizing that we're not where we want to be just yet. I think for me, I've definitely lost jobs in the past to other talented photographers. And, at first I was definitely really bummed and I didn't really necessarily understand why. But I think the more that I looked into that situation, I realized that I just really wasn't ready yet. And for a lot of the jobs that I'm getting hit up for right now, to an extent, a lot of these jobs I've never done before in terms of the caliber and, what they're asking of me. But I think there's a happy medium between that and also just being ready, and I think the concept of being ready is so important because you want to just have everything organized and dialed, and you also want to feel really confident as an artist. And I think that just really comes through experience. You're working with other talented people. Maybe you're assisting, or you're just finding your way somehow onto these jobs that you really want to eventually be kind of like the main photographer for. And when I think about what it means to be ready, for me, that is just the culmination of many, many years of trying and failing and eventually succeeding with my photography work. And for you guys, this might be a little bit different depending on what you're trying to do with your career and, with your art. But I think the idea of being ready and just being fully prepared to take on new opportunities, no matter how large they might seem at the time, is something that I've definitely learned very recently. And it's something that can set you apart from other artists. So over the years of becoming a photographer, I've definitely been able to meet some really incredible people, especially since moving here to Los Angeles. And the more and more time that I'm honestly here in Los Angeles, the more I realize how important it is to not only create, but to nurture your artistic relationships wherever you actually live. And I think this is something that can really help you as an artist, not only with, being able to bounce ideas off of other artists and really kind of feeling part of a community, but I think this is also single-handedly the most important and most effective way to actually get work down the road. So recently I had the chance to sit down and have a conversation with one of my really good friends here in Los Angeles, Andrew Martinson. Andrew is a former sales director at a pretty big agency here in Los Angeles. It's actually one that I used to work with quite a bit. And we actually met over on a production in Arizona and we became really good friends. So I think really what separates Andrew from a lot of other people is being a former sales director. He just has a lot of great firsthand knowledge about what's really going on in the marketing world right now and what brands are really looking for from people like me and you guys as well. I really think that this information honestly isn't very widely known by a lot of people. So I really feel like this is a super valuable conversation for not only me, but you guys as well. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this one, and let's go ahead and get into our conversation with Andrew. All right, well, now we're sitting down. So let's first just start with so I remember meeting you I think it was April last year, and you had hit me up. We've actually worked together on numerous other jobs, and mostly for one particular client, Honda.
Yep.
And that's where we were in Arizona. I was working on the job, and you obviously were from the client side. You were there working, and that's kind of where we like became more friends, I would say. And then we actually just got the chance to like get to know each other a little bit.
Yep.
But what would you say? Kind of break that down, and break down kind of like what you really feel like you were doing, like what. Obviously, like you have a job title, but what do you feel like you really like kind of did? You know?
Yeah. So back when I was on the media side of things, really my job was selling campaigns, right? Reaching out to brands, reaching out to agencies, trying to create partnerships, create relationships, like putting in the grind time, right? So trying to sell campaigns. And like through that, I was lucky enough to be a part of productions. And honestly, I don't come from a production background. I really have no business being on set doing anything like that. So, but it was still cool because I got to be involved in those types of projects. And anytime like I was involved in any sort of production side, it was really when I was like filling in for somebody. So, we would always want to have somebody on site being like the influencer wrangler, right? Because like, you guys are like liabilities every once in a while. So that was really like why I was there. It was like either filling in for somebody, and anytime you're a part of like, the startup scene or a small company, like you wear a lot of hats.
Right.
And, you just have to, be scrappy, pull stuff together. And so really it was kind of fortuitous. Like the person that was supposed to be on those shoots couldn't make it. It was my project, sort of defaulted to me. And that's really like, the scope of what I was supposed to be doing versus like what I ended up doing. And what I ended up doing was obviously getting to meet cool people like you and be on some cool stuff.
So like, I remember that like shoot as in like, there's probably like 15 or 20 people there, which was pretty rad to be part of. That was like one of my first experiences being on like a larger set with more people. And I think that's like kind of a big like transition point for me as an artist. Is like, I wanted to start doing more and more stuff like that.
That's awesome.
Like,
I didn't know that either.
Huh?
I didn't know that either.
Oh, really?
That's the first time I thought you were, this is old hat for you for sure.
Oh no. Well, like, I think it's interesting because I think people in today's like market, with like what I do and what a lot of other people that we've worked with over the years do, like it's kind of like a social first, like we kind of solidify ourselves online. Mm-hmm. And then that's kind of how I've seen it grow, at least, is like I start growing into some more of those like larger productions. And then like, but I started with like just building an audience for myself and like building, just like a platform to be able to be found, mm-hmm. And I was wondering like what you feel like is, kind of the thing that you really notice brands are not only looking for, but like, what do you feel like these companies like really kind of notice, and like what do they look for when they look for someone to potentially hire down the road?
Yeah, definitely. So being in this world, I've definitely noticed trends that are really make or break for as far as like whether you get work or whether you don't, whether brands want to work with you or whether you're sort of forgettable. And that's whether or not you stand for something.
Right.
Like it's 2020. If you don't stand for something, you're really easily forgettable. And that really comes from like taking honest stock of your values, knowing who you are and representing that with who you are, what you do, and ultimately your content, right? And the better job you do of that, the more people can sort of recognize that, the more your audience will recognize that, and the more people that you want to be working with professionally will notice that as well. If a brand can get a sense of who you are and your values, it's a really easy decision whether they want to align with that or not. And you know what? If some do, fantastic. That's the basis of a great partnership. If not, you don't want to work with them anyway. So that's sort of the I think above everything else, that's really where it has to start. Whether it's people, whether it's brands, like if you don't have values, if you don't stand for something, what's the point? And beyond that, obviously you need to be technically competent. You need to make good content. You need to be good at what you do. And always focus on that because that's really going to show as well. And then the last thing is just be kind and professional. Like you would really, it's easy to take for granted how meaningful those types of things are. Sure. And like the reason that we worked with you so many times, your content was awesome. We got a really strong sense of who you are, and you were easy to work with. And yeah, you were professional. You approached it like a job. You showed up on time every day and you acted like a pro. Like I had no idea that was your first big production like that. And that made an imprint. So it's small, but it goes a long way. It's just be easy to work with and be kind, be a good person.
I think it just goes to show, that like, I honestly feel like it gets to a point where, at least this is something that I've experienced, you get to this point where you really feel like every single person is making similar quality stuff. And especially in today's world, like, we're all making really beautiful stuff. Me, like people I know, like we're all working towards like, perfection in a sense. And
you guys are all raising the bar.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
But like when you get to that point though, it's, there's so many people around you that are already making great stuff. And I really think it does come down to those intangibles of, do you show up on time? Are you professional? Are you just going to make sure that you get the job done? Like even when things don't go perfectly or the weather sucks or, whatever it is, like you're still going to figure out a way to get it done because that's what you're getting paid to do, and I think that's what so many people don't understand is you have to, above all else, just make sure that you are prompt and you understand what is being asked of you and you're making sure that you communicate in a way that makes sense for everybody.
Absolutely.
So you've obviously worked with tons of different managers who might manage someone like myself or other photographers, influencers, all that kinds of stuff. Like where do you feel like the value is in that? And do you feel like it's necessary?
Yeah. So when you get to a certain point, it absolutely becomes necessary, but I wouldn't say that you have to have one to be successful. I think the value of management and the value of representation really comes in when it becomes like a full-time job. When you're starting to get serious money for projects, and with that money comes a lot of implications, a lot of contracts, being able to understand things like content usage rights, being able to sort of navigate exclusivity. Like I think just using an example from some of the work that you've done, anytime you take a big project with like, a Honda or a Toyota, whoever, they're going to want you to not work with a competitive brand for a certain amount of time. And you need to really understand like the terms of the contracts that you're signing and to be able to negotiate that process. So at that point, a manager absolutely becomes a necessity. If that's not something that you're competent with, if you don't have a legal background, or if you don't speak legalese, or if you're not really skilled at negotiations, like that's really where the value is. If they can be proactive in bringing you work, even better. But the early stages, you can get by without one. And it's just about understanding the contracts that you're signing, understanding the jobs that you're taking, and being proactive about getting yourself work.
Because I remember, so when I first started, I've had a manager since I was 17 now. And
shout to Bird.
Yeah. Nick, if you're watching. But I think, the thing that I've definitely noticed is, and it's something that I was told early on and it really kind of stuck with me. At first, when I learned about it, I wasn't really too stoked. And it was just the fact that you can't really rely on these people to get you work. Like I think that's such a huge misconception is that you hire or you have a manager to solely get you the jobs. And like the problem is if you couldn't get this stuff by yourself, they're going to have just as hard of a time getting the work for you as well.
And you might not be their biggest client, their only client. Like these are all really important factors. Like luckily you're with a really great group. You have a really awesome manager that's bringing you deals and stuff like that. But yeah, that's also a part of the sort of the equation that you have to factor in, right? Like, you have to be your biggest advocate. You have to pound the pavement for yourself, and you have to be proactive about identifying the brands that you want to work with, and even taking it a step further, like get in front of those people. The same work that I do at my job, trying to sell, to brands and to agencies. That's really the work that if it's not you doing it, somebody on your team has to be doing it, because stuff's not just going to come your way all the time. And obviously when you're big and you're out there, it will, but even then it's not enough.
Oh, agreed. Like I would even say right now, like if I wasn't as proactive as I am with not only reaching out, but just shooting the kinds of work that I want to be getting hired for, I would not be getting half of what I get in my inbox, I would say, if I had to guess, and I think that's another thing that I would really encourage people who want to be getting more work down the road is to really just show what you can do, because essentially there's so many people on the internet now that can do so many different talented things, but you have your own unique vision and you can project that, and clients don't know what they want until they see and so they see it right in front of them. Right. And I think that's something that can really be beneficial to people like me is, you can really create something super unique in yourself, because that's what the world needs to see more of, is just like more unique stories, more interesting types of photography and filmmaking and all this kinds of stuff. less just copying each other. And it's just like, one big churning pot of everybody copying each other, which is a lot of what it has become, unfortunately. But I think the cool thing is I think that also has sparked a lot of really unique creativity and interesting concepts and ideas. And, it just goes to show, I think, that you don't necessarily need a large following in order to get XYZ brand hitting you up.
Mm-hmm.
I think you and I just kind of described that it's really just about the quality and also knowing what you're trying to achieve with what you're making.
Sure. Yeah. And to that point right there, like the size of following used to be really what people relied on to validate themselves, right? Great. Like I have X number of followers, and really what we're seeing now and have been seeing coming for a while. And it's, depending on who you talk to, it's either been here for a while or is definitely here now, but following is almost meaningless. And what I mean by that is the vanity metrics, it's not enough. Especially when you get into things like, Facebook and Instagram changing the algorithm so only a certain percentage of your followers will actually see your content. So it's much less about how big your following is. It's more about how well does your following respond when you speak to them? How aligned are you guys? How interested and engaged are they? Are you producing content that they care about? Maybe they cared about it when they followed you, when they hit follow for the first time, but do they care about it now? Are you keeping it fresh? Are you being true to who you are? And is that sort of being reflected in your content? The more brands see the same everywhere they go, to your point, seeing that like kind of same style, everybody talks the same, dresses the same, makes the same content, the more they're looking for like something else. And that's where people that have that uniqueness, that sense of self, those strong values that really come out in their content, despite the following size, that's really, how those types of people become meaningful in this space. And that it's much more about the quality. And if you can if you're hitting a niche that no one else is hitting, does not matter. It does not matter how big your following is. The content's good. If you're talking to the right audience, there's value.
And I would say too, I think that, yeah, at least a few people that I know have a significantly less follower base than I do, and they're getting way more work. And the reality of it is they're much more solidified in their approach. And I think, again, that is just something that people will just overlook instantly, and I think it's really easy, like as artists, as like creators, as, people who are making things on the internet, to just see a follower count and they'll see a number associated with somebody and they'll instantly associate success and, uniqueness to that person. And I'll speak firsthand. I don't think that that's necessarily the case, Sure. And I think at times I really haven't even felt unique very honestly with my approach sometimes. And I think it just kind of is a gut check to you sometimes. It's, it's like, all right, I got to kind of go back to like my roots of like why I even started to do this in the first place.
But I think that's also informed like the direction you're going now, right? Agreed. Like you were always really amazing at creating like a very, like aspirational lifestyle type aesthetic, like really amazing landscapes, really amazing portraits, the kind of stuff that really attracts professional work. And you were really successful at that. You hit that target really hard. But naturally you're starting to see like the evolution of where you want to go. You're like, great, I created a model that a lot of people really wanted to follow. And yeah, a lot of people are getting really good at doing that.
Definitely.
What do I want to do now? What direction do I want to go? And I think you're really onto it because you have a unique perspective on this industry. You have a lot of really cool insight to share, and you're really, really early on in your journey as far as where you're at in this industry. And know that, because that's valuable too. That insight, really like what you're doing right now, who this is geared for, this is a lot of value for people.
Definitely. When I think about just like what we're even talking about here, essentially it's just like how to feel like the stuff that you're putting out on the internet is valuable to other people. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the wrong way to think about it. Mm-hmm. It needs to be valuable for yourself first.
Sure, definitely.
And I think that that's like a huge part of like why I get so excited about releasing stuff, like is because I'm excited about it first myself,
Yeah.
And the more that you can get excited behind the stuff that you're making, I think it can be transformative in the success of your career. Honestly.
And whether it's one person that gets it, 100 people that get it, a million people that get it,
doesn't matter.
It does not matter. Like you get equally stoked by like that really like hitting the nail on the head, having it resonate with someone and creating that connection with someone. And I'm telling you, like that is the moment that brands are after. That really is.
Because I think right now, like we're seeing an interesting progression of, people as individuals on the internet, but they're becoming like these essentially like, podiums for these brands to align with, and I think I would love to hear your opinion on, do you feel like as time progresses, we're going to see a lot more like long-term partnerships with creators and with artists and stuff? Because in my opinion, I think that's the direction that a lot of brands want to go, because they like that long-term association with people like me, or people like, anybody else that you've worked with, like, because it not only gives them like validation from a brand's perspective that they're associating themselves with the right people because they've seen what they can do as the individual, but then all of a sudden when they can also create really meaningful stuff for the brand and with the brand, align with what the brand is interested in doing, like it becomes like all of a sudden so much more valuable.
Right. And depending on who you talk to, that's a trend that's either been coming for a while, is already here, or has, been here for a while, frankly. And I think you've seen it. The more consistent you work with one brand, the easier it is to integrate that into the content. Sort of the better the results are at the end of the day, right? Like you'll notice, whether people were receptive to a video with ads that were, or sponsorships that were like well aligned and well integrated versus ones that were kind of clunky and just stuck together. We are really past the point where those like one-off type activations make sense for brands. Like there's very few moments.
Mostly like extremely large creators.
Right. It's when they're going for big splashes of awareness, right? And maybe like they want to take advantage of somebody's like impulse purchase. Like I saw a super cool t-shirt and I want to go buy it. Boom. I can take, like, that makes sense there, but that is really not representative of the entire market. And I think it's a two-way street. The brands get much more for their money. The creator gets a more long-term relationship that feels right and that is more aligned with who they are and who their audience is. And yeah, that's just really where things are going, if you ask me, where they've been for a while. And I think that's really why you're seeing different sort of platforms wax and wane in terms of like their popularity with sponsorships.
I would want to ask you too, like, do you feel like we're going, like, I mean, obviously I think it's really hard to predict where this industry is going, because it seems like it changes almost every single day, to be honest with you. And I'm sure you probably agree with that, seeing the back end of things. I wonder how things are going to progress in terms of how people eventually are going to have to somehow continue to reinvent themselves even in the future. I think because if we're already at this point of so many people creating very similar things, and I'm not necessarily out of this boat myself either as well. Like we're all creating a general sense of similarity with the stuff that we're making. Like I think you definitely have your unique points of interest, and I think that's where I've found success personally, and other people as well. But I think I'm very interested to see what happens in the future with how people continue to really make unique stuff. In that I'm talking, like a year or two from now is going to feel like a lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. Moves quick.
It does. Yeah, definitely.
This industry moves in dog years for sure. I think you see that with platforms like TikTok that come out and overnight they're massive. People are blowing up all the time. And it's really like kind of hard to grapple with. You have a short form platform or short-term content platform really exploding out of nowhere. And then on the other hand, you have like podcasts, video, like long form video that's crushing it.
Yep. And
how do you reconcile those two trends coexisting at one time? And I don't have that answer.
Yeah, neither do I.
I mean, I don't know where things are going. I just kind of know, and I think it's really the onus is upon every creator individually to make those reads, to look around, to understand what's interesting, but also at certain points just to like kind of tune out the noise and go back to like, all right, what the hell do I want to do? You have developed technical prowess around photography, videography, storytelling. If this shit goes away tomorrow, there's a lot of people that'll be left out in the cold. I think you'll still get work. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's just kind of the reality of things is if you have really kept your head down and invested in your craft, invested in yourself, you're going to be able to weather those types of changing environments a lot better than most people, because, then you actually have other directions that you can pivot towards, and the ability to pivot, to quick pivot, and to translate your skills from one sort of application to another, that's what's going to make a difference here.
Agreed. Yeah. And I think you hit on a really important topic of this, I think, diversifying. And I think I definitely for so long just was, honestly just relying on Instagram as my main source of income for many, many years. Like all the way through high school, for the first several years outside of high school, like even like living, even just I think living on my own for the first several years, all I did was rely on Instagram for any source of revenue or income. And it wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but I was always kind of worried. I was like, well, if this goes away tomorrow, I want to make sure that I have other things that I've invested my time and also knowledge and technical skill into, you know? And I think that's something that I would really suggest other people do more of. Is I think so many people are just rooted in one thing, one platform, one, you know, thing that they're good at. And I think people could really like diversify a lot with like what they want to be doing. I think there's so many different avenues now, not only to make revenue, but it really just to like be creative and like have interesting, unique perspectives on things. And I really think that that is a huge part of where you're going to see a lot of the success come from in the coming years, is people being really streamlined across multiple different platforms and multiple different like kinds of stuff that they're making, you know?
Absolutely. No, you see it everywhere. You really do. Politicians are crushing it on Twitch. Like AOC was on Twitch the other day, and it's like the third most popular stream that they've ever had. I mean, that's pretty wild, right? Like, so I totally agree with that. The more that you can, again, just lean on what you do, and really invest in sort of yourself and your craft, and really do stuff that feels right with you. You can go with that, whatever direction you want with that.
Totally. And what would you say, in your opinion, do you feel like it's better for people to niche down on a certain topic, or would you say, and I'm saying this could be across multiple different platforms, they have a niche of what they do, or do you suggest that people kind of try a bunch of different things, especially when they're starting out, seeing what kind of like they feel like they have the most fun making, and that will eventually translate into success at some point.
Try a lot of shit, learn, fail, break stuff, figure it out. Like that's Amen. Yeah, right. Like that's it. I mean, you're gonna fail at a lot of stuff, and who cares? Like, really, who cares? If you learn from it, if that sort of strengthens your resolve, if you're able to bounce back from that kind of stuff, you know, that's really going to be powerful. That's going to be a powerful asset.
And I wanted to kind of ask a question just about, like, we're probably going to see more times, maybe not as crazy as this, but times where kind of the whole marketing and media world just kind of gets thrown upside down.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think we've probably seen it in the past, but I think we're really feeling the kind of roll off of that right now so much, is because we're so connected. We've never been so connected. What would you say would be some good advice for people who, you know, people like myself, people like who are making things, to kind of almost in a sense prepare for stuff like this one? You know, like, we've kind of hit on a lot of the different ideas of, you know, you should really kind of diversify and kind of just hone your skill set so that you don't have to rely on one specific thing to make you money. But would you say you had anything else that you really kind of have seen from other people that are still standing out even in the midst of what's going on right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, right? I think it goes back to a lot of what we were talking about as far as like taking honest stock of who you are, what's meaningful to you, and always ask yourself the tough questions and be prepared to answer them, right? Like, if your game is Instagram, what happens if Instagram goes away tomorrow? What if Facebook and Instagram decide to turn the lights out on the whole sponsored content type deal, or totally segment sponsored content, brand content from like organic content? Like, ask yourself those questions and ask yourself, are you prepared for that? And if you can answer those questions honestly and find those answers for yourself, then you'll be ready for that kind of stuff.
Definitely.
You will be able to pivot towards the things that make you happy, the things that fulfill you, and maybe ultimately the things that bring you, like, you know, traditional, whatever that means to you, success, whether that's like monetary, whether it's just like loving what you do and being happy. Those things aren't mutually exclusive, you know? So I think it really comes down to that. And on top of that, being resilient and like having a good attitude are really, like, they go hand in hand. Like, you got to be able to roll with it, right? Like, you got to be able to accept failure. You got to be able to, you know, grind and embrace the grind, because that's what's going to get you, you know, when you're down, you got to know that another peak is coming.
Absolutely.
And if you can hold on to that, you'll be able to weather this kind of stuff. And I think, I think that's really underestimated, how much your sort of like individual outlook and your attitude and who you are, how much that actually impacts your like commercial success or your professional success.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So I think I have like kind of one more question I really want to ask before we wrap this up is, would you say, because I get honestly, one of the most asked questions I get on this YouTube channel, and the questions I get when I get emailed or tweets or Instagram DMs is, should people be outreaching to like specific brands themselves, or do you find that isn't as successful as just really like making the work and waiting to get noticed?
First of all, yes. 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 Like if it's not you, it's got to be someone else. And there, we were talking about this before, like there's the content side, and you've got to be making content. You've got to be pushing yourself. And as far as like, is my stuff compelling? Is it resonating with people? Do I like it? Is this what I want to do with myself? But like, there's the other side of that that's like a lot less glamorous. That's like really more akin to like what I do every day.
Totally.
And what I've been doing every day for the last, like, my career.
Right.
Is it's the grind. It's putting in the work. It's reaching out to people, to practitioners, to decision makers. Like there's people running these campaigns for these brands, like agency side, brand side, wherever it
Real
is.
people.
Real people all the time that appreciate relationships, that appreciate professional people that are easy to work with, but that also like appreciate good stuff when they see it. And when you have those, like that right mix of people and you get in the right room and you get in front of the right person, like there's no substitute for that. There really isn't. So if it's not you doing it, it should be someone on your team, but don't trust that someone else on your team is doing it and like totally let that out of your mind. Like all of these people have LinkedIn. All these people have email addresses. All these people at the same company, their email addresses are probably all kind of similar.
It's probably just like first name, last letter at blank.com.
For real. So like, and there's not many people that deviate from that. So like hustle hard. Like you've got to know that this is, it's the content game, but it's also about getting in front of the right people, creating those relationships and making an impression, whether it's, how good your content is, how easy you were to work with, were you a good person, and were the results there.
Definitely.
So I think all of those things, like, they're, you need those, but there's still the hustle. And that's what this, a lot of this is. If you're hustling, if you're getting, creating those relationships, you're proactively reaching out, and I'm sure you know this, and others that do this as well will definitely know, you've got a wish list of brands you want to work with. There's no reason that you can't have a wish list of brands, identify the decision makers at those brands or at those agencies, and reach out to them. Say, hey, I'm this person, here's my content. If you can put your best foot forward, if it's not a fit for them right now, they're gonna remember you. They're gonna hit you up later.
Exactly.
That's happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to you.
Oh yeah, I think so. I would say some of the biggest jobs that I've gotten monetarily, honestly, have come from originally taking a pretty subpar pay cut to get the chance to work with somebody and show what I can do and impress them.
Right.
And all of a sudden, the next 6 months rolls around and you get lit up for the biggest job of your career because you took a chance and you showed people what you can do. And I think that translates to any level and at any person starting at any point in their career is if you can really show what you're made of, and whether that's taking a pay cut and doing stuff for free or even just a really low amount of money, I would personally suggest that, especially to people starting out in their early in their career. But I think as that progresses, obviously, I think that changes. But I think just overall, just finding a way to show what you can do and to prove that you are worth not only monetarily, but I think, just worth working with on a regular basis, the more successful you're going to be able to be.
And to that point, we're seeing this a lot more, not just with, smaller folks that are starting out, but more established people is creators are taking money on the back end now. So like when this sort of type of engagement started, they paid you to show up, to create content, or they gave you something and you created content for them.
Right.
Now the sort of the relationship has changed. Like they want long-term relationships. They want to be working with you on consistently, but they're also willing to pay you more on the back end rather than up front because they're interested in performance. How many people saw your content? How many conversions? How much traffic? What are all those down funnel metrics that brands and agencies really look to evaluate?
Right.
How successful something was. They'll pay you on the back end for solid performance. So if you feel strongly about a partnership, be okay with taking less up front if there's incentives on the back end that you feel confident in. And also again, be upfront with brands and agencies. Tell them hey, look, I'm really not interested in one-off stuff. Here's my rate. I'm happy to work something out that's more long-term, and let's try it out. And if this is something that we both feel good about, there really is not a scenario where that doesn't make sense.
Absolutely. And I think now this kind of segues honestly into probably one more question that I think people would find very valuable is, without giving too much away, Is there kind of a clear-cut way that you've seen over the years for people who don't have a lot of experience to price themselves when brands approach them? Because I think we're at an interesting intersection right now of, at least for me, I get hit up just as much to create and share something on one of my channels as I do to license that right after.
Right.
Like, that's my bread and butter right now, honestly, is I get hit up to shoot something that's usually a bit more high end than just me going out and taking a quick photo with my phone. Obviously, everything's really planned out and organized. I usually have multiple people helping me. And it feels much more of like a mini production now than anything. And I see that transpiring more and more and more with other people as well. And I think it's interesting now because I not only need to understand how to price myself when sharing to all my channels, but also how to price when I'm shooting stuff for brands to use for their own unique content, whether that's on web, whether that's social, whatever it is. Like, have you found like even just like a philosophy that people should kind of stick towards? I'm not necessarily thinking like metrics based, more so just like, you know, is there a way to know that you're charging somewhat of what might make sense?
Yeah. So it really depends on kind of like who's paying, right?
Right.
I come from a media background. So the metric that people are always evaluating their spend was CPM, right? Cost per impressions, right? And we were just talking about how following doesn't really mean anything anymore. And it's kind of, you know, yes, impressions are important, but they kind of just want to make sure that your impression, your following rate is sort of like consistent, like whether it's organically consistent. Do you have fake followers or not?
Totally.
If that checks out, yeah, it's people see it as a source for media, but there's something else. There's something else there. And really what that is, it's your content and your connection with your audience. And the reason I bring that up is because if you're producing long form content that's high production value, that's a lever that's going to increase the value and how much you should charge, right?
Absolutely.
Also, how is that brand going to use your content? What are the usage rights? What's the exclusivity? If, you know, Honda comes in and says, hey, I don't want you to work with another brand for another 3 years, another auto brand, you're probably going to want to
get... That's worth a lot, yeah.
It's worth a lot, right? Like you're getting hit up for auto stuff quite a bit. So you got to factor that in. Also, where's that content going to be?
Right.
Is it just going to be posted to Instagram or YouTube once by the brand? Is it going to be a part of a massive ad campaign? You got to really understand where that line is and know where your content's going to appear before you can put a value on it. Because when you're comparing to, you know, commercial production, when you're comparing to actors, actresses, musicians, like what they charge to appear in their content versus what influencers charge or creators charge,
it's a fraction.
It's a fraction. Like creators are charging a fraction, but the sort of machine behind them isn't the same as the machine that's behind those the bigger name celebrities, the mainstream kind of what this industry used to really exclusively go to. So understanding that sort of relationship right there, understanding that dynamic is really crucial. And obviously we didn't like hammer out like an equation, but it's really just important to know the factors.
Totally.
But also to know the market rate, right?
Well, I think too, also like, I like what you said about there's different kinds of brands that would hit you up. You know, there's like the household brands that obviously you're going to charge a lot more for than, you know, maybe a local company that's interested in working with you because they like that you're, you know, from the same area or something like that.
Right.
You know, like it still remains true no matter who you're working with. I think I like the point that, you know, you can really kind of compartmentalize all the different factors of the actual campaign and not only what you're delivering, but where is it going to be seen? And if you're delivering it to the brand specifically, where is that going and what is that doing? And I think that's where having an agent really helps because they'll ask those questions for you.
Yep.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't do that by yourself. You just really need to be proactive and really understand that, you know, everything is going to be very up in the air until you make it not so, you know, like until you really kind of bring it down and understand where this stuff is going and how much you should eventually charge for it.
This is a question that brands and agencies are trying to answer every day themselves. So it's totally okay for this to be a conversation, for this to evolve.
Yep.
Know your worth, know what it costs to produce the content that you are creating, your equipment, your time, you know.
Hiring people.
Correct. Hiring people. Like there's people behind the scenes here.
Totally.
And, you know, when you're working on, you know, commercial stuff, like brands should expect to pay a premium for higher quality content, for more production value, for niche audiences, for large audiences.
And I think that they do. They understand that.
Yeah. I think they do too. But it's really important for people creating content to know that as well. and to understand the nuances and the levers that drive cost up or down.
Yeah, I completely agree. Wow, well, that was a lot of amazing information. Thank you so much for hopping on.
Of course, man. This is super fun.
Yeah, giving me a chat.
Yeah, man. Really appreciate this. This is super fun.
This was super fun. All right, everyone. So that kind of wraps up today's chat with Andrew. I hope you guys really enjoyed all of the amazing inside knowledge that he was able to provide with this conversation. I had a blast. I'm really excited to do more of these in the future. I think it's a really unique opportunity for me to really bring you guys a lot of unique and interesting information from really great people, first and foremost, who just like love what they do, and they're also in just a really exciting and ever-changing landscape. So if you guys have any questions for Andrew or myself, definitely leave those down below. I'll make sure that he sees some of these questions as well. But yeah, thank you so much as always for watching. I'm very excited to continue this series with some more really talented and really interesting people here in Los Angeles. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next week.